you remember what that was like, finding out you're going to Afghanistan and then
Yeah,
getting ready to move
sure.
out?
Yeah. So, we found out we were going back to Afghanistan, and then found out the mission that we were going to be doing is this mission set called Village Stability Operations, which was very new to all of Afghanistan at that time. So there had been some ODAs, some special forces units that had been doing that mission for probably about a year, but there was no SEAL teams that had done it. And it was still a very new mission set just in general for soft forces for that campaign for Afghanistan. Now, do ODAs, do SF, is that kind of what they trained to do? Yeah, in a semblance, that's what they trained to do. So it wasn't necessarily outside of their scope, but it was the first time since really Vietnam that they were asked to do that mission in a theater of war. So for us as SEAL teams, like that, we didn't focus anything in those different skill sets that were needed for for village stability operations, where you're going to be embedded in a village and your expectation is train up the local villagers to be able to be their own security presence to keep the bad guys at bay. Basically, everything we did was, how much more lethal can we be when we're sneaking around at nighttime trying to kill the enemy and sneak into their house? So we had no preparation for this during our workup cycle. So to help get us prepared, and again, it was a very new mission set, so there wasn't a whole lot of things to do. You brought in Kilcullen to kind of give us an overview of counterinsurgency and what that looks like and different things. And I remember that making a big impact on me, because it was the first time that anyone had been able to sit down and really give us kind of points of performance and what we could expect more than likely when we got over there.
And then do you remember, so you take off to Afghanistan, we say goodbye, you go to Afghanistan, I go to Iraq. What were those first couple of weeks like on the ground?
Yeah, so fire hose is what the first couple of weeks were. So we fly into Mazar-e Sharif, which was amazing to be there. So much history, so much things that have happened over the past, quarter century before us there, that it was just kind of amazing just to be in Mazar-e Sharif in and of itself, this legendary place inside Afghanistan. And then, when you land, we were working for an AOB, which is basically, your parent command, if you will, when you're in theater. And the AOB was made up of all Army Special Operations Forces, so all Army Green Berets. And they were awesome. But the expectation is, because that's what they do for a living, is kind of this village stability operations mission set. The expectations was we landed and, we were expected to already know exactly what we were getting ourselves into. So had some conversations with them, said, hey, don't send us out this very second. Give us a couple of weeks to go and talk to some of your platoons that are already doing it, to get the lay of the land, to try to build up some information for ourselves to better prepare. And they said, awesome. So myself, platoon commander, platoon chief, flew around to a couple different ODAs, to their VSO sites, talked to them, got a little bit of knowledge of what we were going to be facing. And then within a couple of weeks, it was load the vehicles, drive 300 miles north, and you're going to embed in this village that no Americans have been in, I don't know if any Americans had ever been in there. And then, it was basically build your camp up. You're providing your own security, build your camp up. So night one, was quite literally circling the wagons. It was, we got there, we embedded, we met the village elders that were inside of that village that were expecting us. And then it was get the up armored vehicles, make a perimeter, take the high ground, and let's start building out a camp. So the focus of about the first 2 to 3 weeks was just build security out so that we felt safe enough to operate. And thank goodness that was the priority, because it didn't take more than a couple of weeks before the insurgents decided to test that security quite robustly. So it was, as a new guy, you're like, this is amazing. I'm getting dropped off in a village in the middle of nowhere in Afghanistan with my platoons, and we're basically told, clear the bad guys out and train the good guys. Like, what more could you possibly ask for as a new guy in the SEAL team?
Jeez, do you remember the first time you guys were tested?
Yeah. So, tell you the first time we were tested, but it was very quick and it was over very fast, was I was running a resupply to the next American base, which was about 40 miles through the mountains up the road. And my vehicle was the third in the convoy. And it's moon dust out there, as you know, being in Afghanistan. So the first vehicle kicks up this cloud and you can't see anything. So first vehicle goes. What that means is you've now got to separate the distance between vehicles so that if the first vehicle has to stop, the second vehicle doesn't crash into them. So now, instead of running a pretty tight patrol, we're running 100 and 150 meters in between the three vehicles so that we can actually see when the dust clears enough to safely travel. So my vehicle is the trail vehicle. The last vehicle was myself, my JTAC, Graham, who's an awesome guy, and then one of our Army counterparts that was with us. And we hit a pressure plate that was connected to a 40-pound HME charge, and it blew the back axle. Luckily, we hit it on the back left side, so instead of absorbing a lot of the blast right underneath our seats, it blew the back axle off and basically pushed the vehicle forward and dissipated a lot of the energy. So after that happened, trying to get comms with the patrol, we finally get them. The rest of the platoon comes to help out, and then we start getting engaged shortly after that. But it ended up just being probably over in about 15 minutes. It was probably, looking back at it, we were probably being tested, and they were trying to see how we would react to it. So not too eventful.
That's pretty eventful.
The real test game.
That's going to be pretty eventful for anyone listening to this. And you don't have air, right? How far away is air for you?
Air for us was probably about 30 minutes away at any given time.
So you're in an engagement, you're not getting air for at least 30 minutes.
And that's if you can get it. That's if you can get it. There's lots of other units that are operating. And if they call a troops in contact, which means they're getting shot at, all the air is going to support them. And I'm probably not getting anything. So 30 minutes, best case scenario.
Oh, man. Do you think, did the other vehicles in front of you, did they hit it and it just didn't go for some reason? Or did you just miss it? Like, was it positioned in a way?
I think they just missed it. I think they just missed it. It's possible it could have been a crush plate, but with a 20,000 pound Mat V running over the top of it, it'd probably crush it the very first time. So I think they must have just somehow missed it, and we were unfortunate enough to hit it. But it took us 20 minutes just to get them. And when we first told them that we hit an ID, they started laughing and they thought we were goofing around. We're like, no, we're being serious. Like, you guys have to come back and get us because we're immobile right now. So
you do with the vehicle like that? Do you tow it out of there, or do you blow it in place, or do you fix it? What do you do?
We had a recovery team come in from one of the big bases, and they had to recover it. But, it was left there for a couple of days, and we took everything sensitive out of it, obviously. We had eyes on it as much as we could. We had our Aqua Puma, the great Aqua Puma, which is your own little, UAS system. So we were looking at it and making sure nothing was happening to it. But it took, I believe, a day or two before the crew could get out there to actually do a recovery on it.
How about your base getting hit?
Yeah, so the base getting hit, I want to say, was 2 weeks into us embedding. And it at first was a little bit surreal because it just started, middle of the day, broad daylight, and it just started. And all of a sudden, rocket rounds, mortar rounds, and PKM fire started coming in. So to give a little lay of the land, the village is, kind of here, and we're surrounded by a couple of high points. So we had observation post on top of the high points with all the heavy weapon systems. So high points for us. The village is here where our base is. And then there's a very big dry wadi, probably 400 meters. And then a bunch of mountains on the other side of that. And they were on the back side of the mountains, launching the attack from the back side of the mountain. So phase one of the attack was probably soften the target with a bunch of small arms fire and standoff weapon systems. And then I would assume phase two would be, once they've done as much damage as they wanted to start clearing through the wadi, clear through the village, try to take care of us, but then also terrorize the village and let them know in no uncertain terms it's unacceptable to work with the Americans, which would mean a lot of people in that village were going to die. So when it started happening, it was just very abrupt. And the thing that sticks out to me to this day is just the aggressive mindset of our platoon chief, who did not even hesitate for a second. He just said, get in the vehicles. We're going to those mountains. We're going to push them off the top of the mountains. And I remember thinking, did you even think this through? Like, how on earth do you have the answer like that? And obviously he had thought this through. He had probably played this scenario through his head 1,000 times being there, because he's tactically in charge of the unit and he's just a great leader. So the unfortunate thing for yours truly was our platoon commander was at a KLE with another
key
village.
Leader engagement.
And he was listening. So key leader engagement. So he was meeting with a village elders to try to basically just build some relations, tell them who we were, tell them we were there to support them. So when this is going on, my chief pulls me aside and he's like, hey, listen, Sean, I know this is not what you want to hear, but the big radios that we need monitored are here at the base, and there's no guarantee that we're going to actually be able to make comms when we get on the backside of those mountains. I need you to stay here and make sure that you can run things from these radios and make sure that higher headquarters gets us what we need and they know what's going on and can support. And obviously kind of crushing to me because I wanted nothing more than to load the vehicles up with the boys. But, it's my job. So I stayed there. I helped coordinate the base defense. And really, it ended up being a pretty good time for us because we had the standoff weapon systems at the OP. So our guys were just crushing their positions with laser guided grenades, with 50 cal, with mortars, with Carl Gustav rounds. And at that time, as they're hammering these positions, Chief leads the rest of the platoon to the base of the mountain, and he pops up in a flanking position, which is 1000% not what the insurgents thought was going to happen. They thought they were going to just sit up there and soften the target until they chose to make a move. And then lo and behold, not only are they getting, a pretty overwhelming volley of fire from the base positions, but now all of a sudden they just got flanked and there's, 20 frogmen that are just raining PKM RPG, 7.62 rounds and Carl Gustav on top of them. And it pushed them off of the high ground and it made them go basically on the backside of the mountain into a vineyard and take up positions inside of the vineyard because they were just getting hammered. So then our guys had freedom to move and take over the entire upper part of that mountain range system. And by that time, overhead air had checked on Bone 2-0 and Bone 2-1, which were B-1 bombers. And, they locked on to their positions. And in one drop, they dropped 2 2,000 pounders and 5 500 pounders. And the firefight was over as soon as they did that.
Wow, that's pretty serious. And there's no vineyard left.
No vineyard left. Sorry for the harvest that was supposed to happen. No vineyard left. My favorite part of that is I was talking to Bone as well from the base. And I was like, hey, they were telling what they were going to drop. And I'm thinking, that's a lot of ordnance. I don't know how long this is going to go on. Let's make sure we have more on board. And the guy I was talking to just laughed. And he's like, this is not even scratching the surface of what we have on board. I was like, check. Good to know. So whole thing was probably about 4 hours. And then just like that, as soon as they released the ordnance, it was over with.